Hello and welcome back to Hold On I'm Talking Brother. My name is Joe Greenwood and you are listening to our preview of UFC 298, which is headlined by Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria for the Featherweight title, with a co-main event of Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa in the middleweight division, with a featured fight of Geoff Neal, Hands of Steel versus Ian Machado Garry, with another featured fight of Merab Dvalishvili versus Henry Cejudo. Tom, the UFC are late. Christmas was 2 months ago. But hell, I'm happy to get presents whenever we can. That's right, listeners. I'm joined by my regular co-host, Tom Ballum. He is back to break down this card. He is hyped. We've been arguing for about half an hour before we recorded about this card already. But don't worry, we've saved the good stuff for you. Tom, UFC 298, on the Richter scale, what are we hitting here?
It's massive, Joe. It's the 1906 disruption of San Francisco, Kobe 1996.
Wow.
That got blown up. That's where we're at. The thing is, Joe, the only thing that takes us away from this is just like you just look around the corner and you got UFC 299 and then UFC 300 coming up. Good time to be an MMA fan. Good time to be with the UFC.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I mean, it's stacked. This is stacked to high heaven. I can't wait to get into it. And listeners, that's what we're going to do. We're going to dive into this main event right now for you. Excuse me. Right now for you. We're going to break down each fight on the main card. We're going to make picks for each fight. We're going to choose who we think is going to win. That's going to give us 1 point if we get that correct. And we're going to pick the method. That will give us 2 points in total. However, the committee has come back and they've decided to change the scoring slightly. For title fights, we're going to double it up. 4 points on offer if you can get the winner and method correct in the main event. And that is where we're going to start. Main event of UFC 298. Alexander the Great Volkanovski defends the title against Ilia Topuria. Tom, we're going to start with the champ because that's what champs get. They get to go first.
Thank you.
And
I appreciate that. You're queuing me in here, Joe, I believe.
we're going to start with Volkanovski.
Right. The listeners do need to know who the champ is right here, Joe. It's me, baby. I won it. 2 points to 1 on the last card. We both stunk the place up, but I edged it.
Edged it just a bit. But listen, let's not talk about edging now. Let's get into Volkanovski Topuria. Volkanovski, the champ, he's coming off of a head kick KO loss to Islam Makhachev. Took the fight on short notice for the lightweight title. What are your feelings about Volkanovski right now going into this fight? Because there's some murmuring from the fan base of worry for Volk. Do you have that level of worry for him?
I certainly do. Yeah, my opening question to you is going to be how valid are those concerns? Very valid, I think, has to be the answer. It's a career-defining head kick knockout loss. But perhaps what I found more concerning, Joe, and I don't know how you felt about this, is some of the other things that Volkanovski has been talking about in regards to his general well-being going into that fight. Now, we have been led to believe that Volkanovski is the most dedicated, most disciplined fighter on the roster, and that is why he's so good. But he conceded that he was particularly unhappy, not about taking the fight, not even about how the fight ended, but his condition going in. Too heavy, beers every day, that Australian barbecue lifestyle, that's what he resents. And that shocked me, Joe, because I did not know he was drinking beer or weighing too much. I thought he was the picture perfect athlete.
Listen, man, you can do all you want, but you cannot take the Australian out of a sportsman. He's going to be getting on the beers at some stage. I remember leading up to it that he did talk about like he was drinking before that, but not to the degree that he then disclosed later. Obviously, if he did do that, I mean, Jesus, that would have messed up so many things for so many people, like the betting lines and whatever else. You know, it would have really potentially skewed things quite badly.
It's taken for granted. We know he's Australian, but just like his aura is one of just stoicism, you know, discipline, like go above and beyond, embrace the grind,
Mm.
and that kind of surprised me. I appreciate him coming clean about it, but boy, he must have some regrets.
Yeah, probably does. He probably does. I mean, it has ruined his chances of getting another shot at the lightweight title, at least for the near future. I mean, I am predicting he's not going to be long for the featherweight division, personally. I think he will be moving up sooner rather than later. And yeah, I think that maybe he thought that could be his only opportunity. The other thing that came out was that interview with Eugene Behrman, where he said that they offered him that fight and he actually renegotiated his contract with that so that he got bigger paydays. And it's like, okay, Volk saw the opportunity, which is, yeah, I can go for glory, but I can also set up my life post-fighting, quite comfortably. Well, which is a bit worrying, by the way, that he wasn't already set up. Do you know what I mean? For a fighter that good who's had that many title fights.
True. A win-win until you get kicked in the head in front of your friends, family, and most of the sporting world. That's it's a brutal way to go, and coming back against this man, Ilia Topuria, that is not easing the champ back into his horse. That is quite the matchup, because, Joe, can we talk about Ilia Topuria now?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Topuria, this man's a beast, 14-0, and he's been a wrecking ball through the UFC. He has overcome some adversity in some of his fights. I mean, I'm looking at that
head kick of his own against Jai Herbert.
Yeah, against Jai Herbert. Upper division at lightweight, ate it, well, on his ass, but he continued to fight on from there, wrestled Herbert down, and then proceeded to cut him in half with a beautiful head combo. But since then, he's had he had that one over Ryan Hall. Remember that weird performance from Ryan Hall where he was just doing Imanari rolls and Topuria would just literally step back.
He solved the problem, Joe. He solved the Ryan Hall problem. Pin him down and pound him unconscious. Try and roll now, son.
Yeah, when you put it like that, it's kind of like, why were people so confused by this guy? Like, this doesn't seem that difficult at all. Like, of course this is what you should be doing against Ryan Hall. But yeah, it just completely mashed him into the ground after that. And then the Bryce Mitchell fight, where, everyone was like, oh, Bryce, that could be potential title contender, two young guys going at it. And it was an absolute mauling, to the point where Bryce Mitchell was thinking about retirement afterwards. And then in his last fight, a unanimous win over Josh Emmett, which included a 10-7 round in there in the scoring. He whooped him badly, and that was
could have stopped.
Yeah, probably should have been stopped after the fourth round by Emmett's corner, but Topuria has been seriously impressive so far. Tom, what is the standout performance for you for Topuria in this recent run?
Ooh, I mean, he's amassed quite the highlight reel. It's hard to pick one. Of course, the two most recent fights are the most significant in terms of the rankings and the manner of the victories. I mean, I think it's Josh Emmett, isn't it? Is it Bryce for you?
Yeah, I'd say Bryce. I just think that how he just manhandled him on the ground as well. Like there's that moment where he pancaked him, where he put his Emmett's trying to get up and he puts his hand on his chest and just pushes him to the ground, and it's
down, boy.
Yeah, literally.
Where do you think you're going?
Yeah. Know your role and shut your mouth is what he just said to him. He whooped him badly, but it's very impressive. Like, should we talk about what Topuria does well? Because Volkanovski, there's so much tape on him. We know how he builds his striking game. It's the calf kick, it's the jab, it's the hook off the lead hand. He builds and creates this sort of like spider web tapestry to sort of ensnare you into his game. Topuria, it sounds a little bit more meat and potatoes, but he's more I'm going to blast through you sort of style. It's not the case that there's no finesse, but it's like it's not done subtly, let's just say. It's a lot more.
He's a brute.
Yes. Yeah, a brute in the truest sense.
But as you say, Joe, that doesn't do him justice, because his boxing work and where he's able to do it is kind of what sets him apart. Something I observed coming into this fight is when you look at the tape, and of course there's a lot of building library out there of Topuria and his performances. He's ready to sit in the pocket, slip and rip, step off to off the center line, brutal uppercuts and hooks to the body, and he is ready to stand in that pocket with you and trade. He's coming forwards, and man, nobody's been able to deal with that. You can kick the man in the head, he can take it. So how do you get him off you? And that's the big problem for Volk. I think Topuria, as he has been in his previous fights, will be on the front foot again in this one.
Yeah, sure. I agree. I think some people have gone back to that Emmett fight and gone on how impressive he is. The issue is that he hasn't really fought a guy who's got that sort of output that Volkanovski does, of like throwing as many different things at you at different speeds and rhythms and trying to catch you off guard and trying to get you working and twitching and whatnot. And there was an interesting thing that I got from rewatching I rewatched his last three. And when I rewatched the Mitchell fight, there was something that bothered me for Topuria. Did you rewatch the Bryce Mitchell fight?
I didn't get to the tape, no.
He really overreacted to Mitchell's jab. Like he was twitching massively on it, and even when he feinted it, and he massively overreacted, and he does it with these leans. Like he leans away quite a lot. And also, when you rewatch the Herbert fight and the Emmett fight, in the middle of exchanges, when let's say you throw your left hand as a straight, you want to bring your right hand up to sort of protect your head, like it's kind of like a piston motion that you want to be doing. In the middle of those exchanges, he'll sort of drop his right hand. Just not even that he's loading up a shot like an uppercut or anything. It just drops. He'll drop his right hand. And it's these little things that I saw where I'm like, Volkanovski's going to have picked up on that. 100% he would have picked up on that. It's just that the level of like artillery that's going to be coming from Topuria, I wonder has Volkanovski ever fought a puncher of that power? Like maybe Chad Mendes?
Yes, Chad Mendes. I think now that sounds like a disservice to Topuria, but Chad Mendes, with a bit of help from the laboratory, can be quite the deadly weapon, and will also sit in the pocket and look to trade with you. And yeah, Volkanovski did have to come through some adversity in that fight. Interesting, like thinking about Volkanovski at that time.
Yeah,
I was a little bit dismissive of him because I thought he was this just bull rushing young buck with an iron chin. Much like I look at Topuria now, just waiting to get schooled by the older masters who have that finesse to, clip you with a check hook when you overextend, or to be able to maneuver in a way where you can't step off to the side, where you can't work your usual offense. You're sat in the pocket where you want to trade, but you just get lit up instead of getting your own shots off. And of course, Volkanovski with his reach, something which is being picked up on now, but for such a small man, just 5'6", he's got a 71.5-inch reach. That's 6 feet in reach.
It's pretty substantial.
Pretty substantial in this weight class, and he might just be able to do that, be able to hurt Topuria when he's in that space in the pocket. However, Volkanovski, of course, matured past that point and has gone on to become, one of the all-time greats at featherweight. Will Topuria do the same?
What do you mean elevate? You mean step up to the level?
We're looking at a man here, Joe. He's 27 years of age. He's the full package from what we've seen. Wrestling, grappling, black belt and jiu-jitsu.
The ground and pound.
This could be the breakout for Ilia. And it's a really, really tough one to call. Odds makers out there, Joe, they've got it split.
It is a split,
more or less. Slight lean to Volkanovski because of his pedigree, but very, very close in the odds matchmaking.
I agree. This is the fight I'm kind of most excited for over the next couple months. We've talked about UFC 298, 99, 300 being these super stacked cards, but if I don't get this fight, I will be massively disappointed. This is the fight for me in the whole of the UFC. And actually kind of in the whole of combat sports I'm most interested in, even more than Usyk Fury. Like, this is massive for me. Because, honestly, we're looking at a guy who... I've said it before on the podcast. There is a part of me that thinks that Volkanovski is the best fighter I've ever seen. Like, he might be the best fighter I've ever seen. Just because, like, not even... Let's ignore, like, records or whatever. Just what he does in there is incredible to me. How he can bamboozle guys who are all-time greats. Like, you said that you talked about that Mendes fight, where we talked about like, oh, he's this kind of like bull-rushing guy, and if you actually remember before that, he was like a wrestler. Like, he'd wrestle guys down and just beat them up on the ground. And then that Jose Aldo fight happened, where he absolutely schooled him. He schooled the master. He schooled the best featherweight to ever do it. And Aldo, by the end of it, was like, God, get me out of here. Like, I can't do anything to this guy. And then he beats Max Holloway 3 times. Twice comprehensively. The third time, it wasn't even a contest. Like, it was a true arse-whooping where Volkanovski wasn't even, like, massively fainting. He just beat him up. The Brian Ortega fight, where he overcame adversity, beat the hell out of him. Zombie, who, you know, Zombie was past his best. We can admit that. But in some of his fights in the last few years, he caused people problems who were really good fighters. That Yair fight, he was 5 seconds away from winning. And Volk made him look like a complete jabroni. Like, he wasn't of the level. And now we've got the perfect one for Volkanovski, which is, you got this young guy who's going to take your spot? Nah. I'm the champ for a reason. That is the narrative from the Volk side. From the Topuria side, it's, you got this young, cocky, you know, knockout artist, smash you down, destroy you in every aspect of the game. You know, he can be a star in the Spanish-speaking world. This is perfect for the UFC. He's a young guy. He can take on all the contenders. Can he prove he's of the level? Because realistically, he's not fought anyone of the level. He hasn't faced the Max Holloway gatekeeper. He hasn't even fought Evloev. He hasn't fought, you know, Arnold Allen, Yair Rodriguez. He hasn't fought any of those guys. They've kind of kept him away from that. You know, so I think that with this is that, yeah, we can look at the past performances of these guys, but Topuria's never fought a guy who's ranked top 5, really, has he? I mean, when he fought Emmett, was Emmett 5th or 6th at that time?
Emmett's coming into that fight off another beating he'd received
from Yair.
By Yair.
Yeah, it wasn't like, you know, he's never fought a guy who's in those higher echelons. So for me, with Topuria, my worry for him is that it's kind of all hypothetical. Do you know? And I worry for him as well.
Joe.
Yeah, go on.
Well, when you put it in those terms, yeah, that does check, you know, the steam train a little bit, because I'm getting carried away. Let me tell you, I'm getting carried away with Ilia Topuria. I'm listening to you talk to me about the performance against Brian Ortega, Chan Sung Jung, you know, Yair Rodriguez, and I'm thinking these guys, these are not Topuria. And I think he's a different kind of test, but really, when you look at the paper that's out there, the tape, you know, I'm highlighting his performance over Jai Herbert. That was just a year and a half ago. He's fighting Jai Herbert, you know, and getting dropped by him. Yeah. So, one might say it's premature. One might say that.
I don't know, man. But, you know, he got dropped by Jai Herbert, yeah, but then he won every other second of that fight, pretty much. You know, Bryce Mitchell, it wasn't even close. Ryan Hall won, it wasn't close. The Damon Jackson one, it wasn't close. Sure, he's a young guy.
These are first-round knockouts.
Yeah, but this is a young guy who's not really had these opportunities given to him yet. And Volk had seen, like, this guy coming up. He had said, please don't book him against Max. I want to face this guy. You know, he had made that request, and, you know, he's probably earned that right to say to the UFC, please don't.
Certainly has.
Yeah, I want this contender. Another issue, by the way, I've thought of for Topuria is that he mostly stands at orthodox as well, and Volk, as we saw from the Makhachev fight, as we saw briefly in the Yair fight, the issue for him would be head kicks from southpaws, something that Topuria doesn't have. And another issue I have for Topuria is he massively overswings at times. Like, remember that Bryce Mitchell fight? He was almost like, he was swinging so hard at him because I think he knew Bryce couldn't hang, so he was just like, I'm just going to get him out of there. I will say, though, in terms of what he can offer, is that he's got a really strong wrestling base. That's something that Volkanovski's not faced in quite a long time. Probably since Chad Mendes.
Or Makhachev.
Oh shit! Yeah, hold on. At featherweight, he's not faced anyone with that wrestling base at featherweight. I'll take that back.
Yeah.
But
yes, no, I'm with you. I mean, that brings us on to our kind of last question here before we lay out our predictions. This fight, we anticipate seeing Topuria on the front foot. All right, we anticipate him growing in confidence, starting confident, going in hot, and we've seen him eat shots. So we don't really see Volk, put him away. We see Volk landing some jabs, establishing his game, kind of upsetting Topuria. How does the fight develop from that point? How do you see Volk dealing with the Topuria pressure? Do you see him looking towards the clinch game? Do you see him kicking, taking out Topuria's legs? What do you think the answer is?
I think he will engage in the clinch game.
I think he'll have to.
Yeah, early in the fight, I think he will, and that will be a really interesting battle to see who will have the advantage there. Obviously, Volk got into the clinch game with Makhachev in the first fight. I kind of feel like the second Makhachev fight's not really worth really going into. There was a brief moment where they got into a clinch and Volk spun him and got into the cage, but Makhachev's kind of always kind of happy to do that in a way because he can get into trips from there. But that first one, he got into like some awkward positions, and because Makhachev's size, he was able to hold the back. I would be surprised if Topuria could do that against him, considering he doesn't have the size advantage over Volk.
Yeah.
And in the clinch game, it will be the breaks. The breaks. Who will get off first on the break? Who will have the advantageous position of tying up the other guy's two arms and you having your one arm free, and then you can wait and then load up and throw from the break. That will be interesting to see. I would favour Volk in there. If I'm Topuria, I'm going to use the clinches to get to takedowns. Like, that would be my main point of attack.
Who is stronger of the two? Talking about pure physical strength.
Oh, man. I mean, in terms of pure physical strength, okay, I'd say that Topuria's had the more amazing moments of pure physical strength. Again, the pancaking of Mitchell is the one I go back to, but I would be surprised if it wasn't Volk. Like, Volk must surely be the stronger of the two, having fought up at lightweight, having handled Makhachev at points in the clinch. I don't know. I think maybe early on Volk might have it, but Topuria, I do worry about his overthrowing as well. So maybe expending that much energy into strikes that miss could be a huge flaw.
Didn't seem to matter against Josh Emmett, Joe.
Yeah, but Josh Emmett doesn't have the output of a Volkanovski.
No, but he has cannons, and he landed. He landed on Topuria. He landed.
That's true.
Hit me, Joe. I got to hear it.
You're asking for my pick?
I am.
Volkanovski decision. I have to give it to the champ. Volkanovski decision.
Yeah, anything else would be blasphemy.
Oh, really?
And go against our body, the content we put out there on Volkanovski. Yeah. I mean, I've just gone through the essential prep work of watching his walkout in Australia last time out, which is a biblical religious experience for me. That's why it's made it very hard for me to pick Topuria. But I have done it, and I've picked him to win by knockout.
You picked Topuria by knockout?
I've picked Topuria by knockout, yeah.
Wow, Tom!
I'm sorry. I know. It's been hard to commit that to paper. I'm kind of doing away with everything I've seen. I just feel like this is a really bad one for Volkanovski. I could be wrong. It could be that Topuria isn't that man. We haven't seen it, but what I've seen, it's got to me. I'm scared for Volkanovski.
Wow. So, well, hold on. When did that click into place for you? What did you see in the Topuria?
I haven't liked the matchup for Volkanovski since it was announced.
Right, because of the Makhachev loss?
Yeah, exactly. Before that, if he fights before that, it's kind of like when Usman got knocked out by Leon, and you said, "Well, this is everything's changed now." And of course, you were right. We saw that conclusively in their matchup, and obviously Usman now is cut adrift in the open sea.
Yeah,
still a great fighter.
He's a fantastic fighter. Yeah,
and it's a huge problem. But you pick like a real surging up and comer. You worry for Usman, and I think that's just it. With that loss and the manner of that loss to Makhachev, you were saying it's a perfect matchup because Volk really has to take it seriously. I kind of go the other way, where it's like I just think about these guys in the pocket. I think Volk leaning on what he's relied upon in the past could get him into big trouble here. I think Topuria will go after him. He won't be able to settle into the fight, Volkanovski, and I think he's going to really hurt him.
Wow. Do you think that the amount of tape study that there is available for Volkanovski is another issue? Like, there's so much footage of him. There's so much footage.
Yes, not that I think that's going to change anything about Topuria's approach. It's more Volk's tools. They are, like you said, when he's fighting off beat, off rhythm, he's picking, he's poking, and he's kind of setting up different offenses, right? Changing his timing, changing his angle of attack, his movement, everything. He's switching stances. I just feel like because Topuria can go into that space with him, because he can fight from the inside, and he can take shots to get there.
Yeah,
I just think it's the worst kind of challenge when your chin has failed you.
But then also his preparation failed him as well. I'm not expecting that Volkanovski to be unprepared now for this fight. Also, this is something that you're talking about, that inside fighting. Topuria's hooks to the body are going to be appalling to experience for Volk as well. So I'm wondering if they'll attack his stamina levels as well by going to the body. We also haven't talked about this. I know people talk about that 35 curse, where only...
It's real.
It is. It's a thing. The only example of someone who's won in a title fight over the age of 35, 170 and down on the men's side is Tyron Woodley. If you remove welterweight, it's nobody. Nobody's done it. So,
and that sums up how stark these terms are for Volkanovski coming in. And I want to also say that because I want to give the true credit to him if he is able to come through this, because it's a huge challenge.
Fair enough. Right, co-main event, Tom. He's back. Paulo Costa has returned. It's been nearly 18 months since he last fought, or maybe it's just over 18 months now. He last fought Luke Rockhold at altitude, and it went about as beautifully as you expected. It was tremendous. And he was back against Robert Whittaker, a man who finds himself in an awkward position of having lost twice to Adesanya and once to Dricus du Plessis outside the title contention for the first time in quite a long time in the middleweight division. This is a weird fight for both of these guys, I think, because whoever wins is not going to get a title shot off of this, and I actually think they're going to be set up for a fight with Khamzat Chimaev. That's kind of your reward at the end of this. I mean, who knows if Paulo Costa's actually going to take that fight, if he'll even turn up for this one. But I lead first with Paulo Costa because what are we going to get from this guy? We talk about with Volk, we know kind of what things he can offer us, what things he might do. But Paulo Costa, the last time we saw him against Luke Rockhold, he looked lean, he looked focused, and we've seen nothing from him since. And it's I feel like we always struggle with Costa of what's he actually going to build on? Can he build on any momentum? Can he create any momentum in his career? Because anytime he's sort of built a bit of momentum, he does something to ruin it,
Well, the reality is, after kind of getting any acclaim in the UFC, he's only fought once a year, and that's going all the way back to 2018.
Yeah.
And, that's put him in this category where, to me, he's like one of these very fun personalities. Very fun.
Yes.
Love the man. And love his fights. I love his style, everything. But I don't know if he's a serious contender. Now, this is the fight to show that you're for real.
Yeah.
This
for
is
sure.
Where I think because of his persona and his lack of his poor schedule in the UFC, he's kind of remained there in the rankings, considered as a contender, despite being absolutely humiliated in his one shot at the belt against Israel Adesanya back in 2020.
Yeah.
And this is where we find out, who is Paulo Costa.
He's in the Brian Ortega zone, basically. You've had your cracks at the title, you've been shown up both times, and yet you're still hanging around at the top of the division. You're right there, Tom. He's blown away by my comparison of Paulo Costa to Brian Ortega. Let's continue on with that. I mean, in terms of like a style matchup, I love this fight. You got Whittaker bouncing in and out, karate stance, sort of going to be throwing those obliques to the knees, and then Costa, a guy who has to get inside because his arms are so short. You know, he has to be throwing hooks. He has to try and push Whittaker back up against the cage, because otherwise he could be caught out in open range. Tom, what do you say to that?
I have one slight reservation, right?
Yes. I have one as well.
And that is, it's about Robert Whittaker, actually. And in terms of the fight we're going to get, because Whittaker is capable of fighting in more than one way. Yes, he likes to blitz in. He likes to go toe-to-toe and trade with the big monsters out there, the Yoel Romero of this world. But he's also had to evolve past that, having blitzed in on Israel Adesanya back at UFC 243, and he got clipped, and that changed the trajectory of his career. And then we've seen more cerebral fighting style. We've seen the way that he fought Darren Till, Jared Cannonier, Kelvin Gastelum,
Vettori.
All right, he's a points fighter now. And Paulo Costa, as I said, was shown up by the man who was the greatest point fighter in the middleweight division, Adesanya. I think we could be on for a similar kind of fight here.
Really?
And I don't think Paulo Costa has evolved at all since that loss to Adesanya. No. Am I wrong, Joe?
No, you're not wrong. And also, something that you've with Whittaker as well is that he's actually lent on his wrestling a lot more since that first Adesanya loss. Like, if you see the amount of takedowns he hits pre and post that fight, before that fight it was quite rare, but after that he normally gets at least 2 or 3 per fight. You know, when he fought Adesanya the second time, I think he hit 4 takedowns in that fight. You know, he's consistently blitzing in to then get the takedown. So that changing of levels through the blitz is going to be quite difficult for Costa. My other issue, though, for Whittaker is, though, we saw it in the Duplessis fight, is the size issue for him. Like Duplessis is a big middleweight. Costa is a monstrous middleweight. Like, that is a huge, huge man for that division. And if he looked at that Duplessis fight and thought, I might just have to just walk through this guy. Like, I'm just going to have to like throw big, long combos, lots of straights. I'm just going to walk through this guy, whatever he can throw at me, because I don't think he can knock me out. But, I mean, oh man, it's fascinating to think this. And also, he's kind of in that Volkanovski spot, isn't he? Of like, been finished in his last fight. Slight murmurings, you know, slight like, oh, you know, is Rob on the downturn? You know, the problem is that he's not fighting a middleweight equivalent of Ilia Topuria. He's fighting Paulo Costa. You know, this could be a perfect one for him. You know, a guy who stays very central on the centre line, doesn't sort of curve his movements, will just follow you. If you remember the Adesanya fight where he just followed him, didn't get anything off. Yeah, it was a terrible performance. Yeah, I don't know. In a way, it could be a perfect Whittaker opponent, and in other ways, it could be a nightmare for him. What do you think, Tom? What are you leaning towards?
Well, like you say, Joe, I don't need to ask you who's stronger in this matchup.
No.
Like, Whittaker has to be extremely careful.
Yeah.
The thing is, he is, Joe. He is really careful.
Yeah.
He got clipped. It didn't take that much to put him away against Duplessis. You know, no, it's easy for me. You know, Sat.
Well, yeah, Duplessis wrestled him as well. That's the other thing.
Yeah, and I think Costa has to be ready to do that. You know, he has to close distance at all costs. You know, he has to make it dirty, which is interesting to say when you talk about a man with his kind of build and athleticism. Yeah, but that's what Costa needs to do. He needs to bring the fight onto his own terms. He showed no ability to do that against Adesanya. But like you said, Adesanya, he's not Whittaker. Whittaker is on these terms, Whittaker's a pale imitation of Israel.
Yeah, for sure.
In terms of ringcraft. So yeah, I think you've summed it up really well there in saying it could be the perfect matchup or it's a nightmare. Another huge, huge, powerful fighter. This time I've stayed true to the cloth, to the faith. I've kept the religion, and I've picked Whittaker to win the fight, and I've picked him to win it by decision.
Yep, fair enough. I have picked Robert Whittaker to win this fight by decision, Tom. because Costa just frustrates me. He really frustrates me. I just wish he had a bit more craft.
Is he good? Is he good?
I know he's fun.
He's so much fun.
He's so much fun. So, and I think that kind of clouds my judgment of good. Do you know what it is? Is that, like, I think he's, I don't know how to describe him. He's so willing when he gets in there to throw down that, like, he can make for good fights. But I think overall, I think his craft is, it's not good. It's not good. He's just such a strong power puncher as well. So I think he relies on that a lot more. And if you remember that Vettori fight, when he was so willing just to scrap with Vettori and to keep going. And, you know, he has got a willingness that I think a lot of people aren't going to give him credit for. So, yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't describe him as good. Let's just say I think he's limited.
Could he beat Duplessis?
No.
I would love to see that fight.
I would love it as well. Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of fun. But that's the thing. You just say Paulo Costa, and it is fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Costa
honestly,
Chimaev.
I could just,
Yeah,
and he was ready for that. People obviously tore into him for missing that fight. If you saw the infection he had in his elbow, I think you'd be more sympathetic.
Yeah. He definitely should not have taken that fight in that state. No. Yeah, I give him a lot more credit than I think a lot more people than most people do, because I don't know. I think he's easy to hate as well. You know, and also, listeners, you should be excited for this. Post USADA, Paulo Costa. Woo! Who knows what we're getting? He'll be pulsating.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Just our last comment on this fight, and really on Paulo Costa and the fun element. I'm going to give you one statistic here. All right, and that is his significant strike differential in his fights. It's just 0.12. And that is because he lands at 6.5 per minute, but he absorbs 6.38 strikes per minute, which is a huge number. And
that's massive.
And has fun written all over it. So
yeah,
let's just hope for a good fight.
Absolutely. Now, this is going to be a good fight as well. Geoff Neal, Hands of Steel, is back, and he is facing Ian Machado Garry. Gary's kind of... he's his own sort of soap opera he's sort of created within the world of MMA. He's managed to make an enemy out of everyone who watches the sport, which is a good thing in a way. It makes it, though, that people actually want to watch you. And people will be cheering on Geoff Neal in this fight to beat him. And it's got a bit of narrative to it. You had that thing where Garry wore that T-shirt with Geoff Neal's mugshot on it. And then Garry proceeded to complain when people made comments about his wife. To which I say, bit rich, mate, and not doing yourself any favours. But if this is a character, got to say, pretty good one, because it's made people want to watch you, and I respect that. In terms of the stylistic matchups, this could go, I think, either way, to be honest, Tom. Maybe I'm off base here, but me and you have been quite high on Garry. But there's been things I've seen in a couple of his fights where I'm like, man, Geoff Neal, the ultimate headhunter, up against this guy, could make for some difficult... terrain for Garry to get over.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about that with you. I know we're going to get into the technical details, but I want to talk a little bit more about Ian Garry.
Okay.
and what he is and what's going on. Now, we haven't gone into why he's become so hated, so well known, but he did miss his last fight in the whole wake of this development in terms of his wife and things she had written online, and his treatment also of Neil Magny. I'm not sure it is a character, Joe. I think it might just be Ian Garry.
What, you reckon he's that stupid?
Yeah, it's kind of like you're suggesting he's like Colby Covington. He's kind of playing that uber heel role,
right?
Because he keeps going after his opponents, but
yeah.
I don't know. The first time you meet the man, he's got a bit of cringe to him, and like the second coming of Connor, but without the flair.
Yeah.
The thing is, we've been high on him because of his performances, not because of his persona.
No, No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, that's the weird thing with Garry, isn't it? It's just, I actually think he's really talented. Like, he's a really talented fighter. Like, you saw with that Magny fight, and there's things from that Magny fight that I think will carry over onto this one, which is that sort of rear kick, where he uses the rear leg, mostly to sort of, like, teep to the body. And then he threw one in, like, the third round to the head. Like, teeped Magny to the head, which is, like, almost like a push kick in a way. Really quite horrible sight. Probably doesn't feel great either. I could see him doing that against Geoff Neal as well. I think one of my main issues, though, with Ian Garry is that he leans a lot. He leans back out of range, and I think against a guy like Geoff Neal, it could bait Neal into overthrowing to the head, which could then lead to counters up through the middle, either uppercuts or takedowns from there. Because Gary's been training with Charles Oliveira. I don't know if you've seen this. He's been training with Oliveira, and I was like, is he going to go out and try to fight like shooter box style, where just like, I'm just going to throw everything at you, and then if you take me down, I'm just going to do like mad jiu-jitsu skills to get you off of me? Because I wonder if he thinks Geoff Neal's going to wrestle him. Like, is that going to be... Do you think Neal will go to that? Do you think he'll go for the clinch and then body lock takedowns, or is it just going to be... Yeah, I mean, we've seen Geoff Neal spamming... Remember the Luque fight where he spams left-hand uppercuts 8 in a row? Hilarious exchange. Hilarious.
Changed Luque's career.
Faith. Yeah.
And I mean, yes. That was a true beatdown, and he did to Luque what nobody has been able to. Geoff, he's kind of taken one step forward and one step back, the last few years. Of course, the very frustrating fight against Wonder Boy back in 2020. Yeah. You remember that, Che?
Yeah.
A man with a strong kicking game who moves, and you saw how Geoff approached that. No, I'm going to say it right here. Best kicking game up there with the champ at welterweight. It is Ian Garry.
Do you reckon?
I do. Yeah,
wow.
I think he's brutal. I think he's methodical, precise. Where I worry for him is when he steps into range with his hands, and he gets a bit overzealous. He starts to feel himself. You can see it. Sometimes he starts talking to himself. We've heard that as well. And he wants to show off. He wants to style on people. And when you're getting dropped by Song Kenan,
yes,
you worry against the hands of steel.
Yeah. That sort of, he gets into sort of like hooking range, doesn't he? He can sort of like leave himself open for also shots coming over sort of his jab hand as well. So like sometimes he'll throw the jab hand out there and sort of leave it out there to sort of protect himself, but it'll blind you from a shot coming up over there. The problem is that Geoff Neal is so left hand focused, that I'm like, man, like, I worry for Geoff with that, because he can be a bit predictable. Having said that, though, Geoff Neal in his last fight with Shavkat Rakhmonov, where he took Rakhmonov to the limit, where he went in quite badly injured, apparently, Neal. He was not in a good way. He missed weight as well for that fight. He was injured going into it, and he caused Rakhmonov a lot of issues. And I believe the issue was with his left elbow as well. So you're looking at that performance from a guy who's injured in his left arm, which is where most of his weapons come from, and he puts in a performance like that. Thinking, could he do that against Ian Garry? And then you hear the stories about Ian Garry being handled quite easily by Rakhmonov in training. You're like, maybe there could be something there to it. But I don't know. I think Gary's in and out movement is going to make it quite difficult for Neal to land consistent, clean shots on him. I think he can do it. I just worry he's going to leave himself open for a head kick from Garry. I think that's going to be there.
He's going to get lit up. He's going to get lit up to the body, to the head. That long kicking game, I think, is a problem for Geoff. He's got to get inside. And what damage does he take doing that?
It's going to be a lot.
It's a Machado Garry by decision here, Joe.
I'm going to pick Garry by KO. I think he's going to finish Neal. I think he can catch him overextending and finish him. I think, though, if he doesn't do it early, I think it will be quite a gritty performance from Garry to try and get through it. If he's going to win a decision, I think it's going to be quite gritty to get past Neal. I don't know if you feel the same on that as me. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, he took Rakhmonov to the limit. So, you got to bet on him being able to do similar here. So Gary's, he's going to need to show. he's going to need to show some toughness because he's going to get hurt.
Let's talk about this fight. Oh my lord, Tom. Merab Dvalishvili is back and he's facing Henry Cejudo. Basically, bantamweight title eliminator, who's going to get the shot at the winner of O'Malley versus Marlon Vera. This is a fight of disappointments for me. Because I just look at this and I'm like, man, Henry, you wasted 3 years of your career. The prime of your career to do some weird negotiation with the UFC. You come back, you have that title fight with Aljamain. You're not looking great those first 2 rounds, and then rounds 3, 4, 5, you up it a bit, getting a bit more into the fight. And it's like, man, if you'd just taken a warm-up fight, or if you had done anything, you could have won that fight. But
some people say you did.
I'm not so convinced of that. What do you think? Did you?
Well,
you had Aljo, didn't you?
Yeah, our scores are out there to be heard. It's it's one of these that turns on a dime, and as you say, how he's held, the esteem he's put in, it's very different just for being on the wrong side of that decision. I think Aljo did enough, but he did need to abuse the rule book.
Yes,
the near grounded opponent to do that. I disqualify a point for that in my personal championships. So
yeah.
I'll say that Henry is the championship of my personal
fair enough
champion of my personal bantamweight division. Yeah, I think you're right, Joe. But let me counter you, okay? So yeah, one of the all-time greats took a hiatus. He's coming out of retirement. He's left it too late, and he fell short.
Do you think Cejudo's an all-time great?
Well, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to come back to you on. I think he hoodwinked us all.
Yeah,
and his status did grow through retirement. And he never beat DJ back at UFC 297 to get the flyweight championship decision. I mean, okay, like we know the way that their first fight ended, 197. Sorry, where DJ finished him, dominated him. He worked his way back into contention, and then it was the split decision in UFC 227 back in 2018. That was a robbery. He used that as a springboard to then fight Dillashaw somehow at 125.
Yeah.
And then he got to fight Marlon Moraes.
Yeah.
Who we know where his career has gone since then. And then he fought Dominic Cruz.
Yeah.
So
a washed up Dominic Cruz. Yeah.
Like, this is unbelievable, really. So he wants 2 fights. He was even talking about going up to fight Volkanovski, like a superstar, the mega side, Triple C.
Yeah.
I think that's a great act of sleight of hand, and I have to say, maybe he mastered the game, Joe.
Maybe, but then also, if you left all that money on the table, did you really master the game? Like, did you really get the most out of this that you could have? Because,
well, because he puts it in these championship terms, like. That's how he frames himself, as the ultimate combat athlete. That's what they were trying to sell us on, right? So if he comes back again out of retirement to fight Sterling, the reigning champ, established champ, beats him again, gets his belt back again, then you're having a hard time arguing against this narrative that Henry has built for himself. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I mean, I'm big on context with these things. So they go like, oh, look at all these people he'd beat. And it's just like, yeah, he didn't beat Dominic Cruz at his best. He beat Dillashaw, as you say, using EPO to make sure he could make the flyweight limit. Marlon Moraes, who had these flaws his whole career but never had them exposed. So, yeah, fair play for him on doing that.
Nearly got blown away in the first round against Moraes. We should also mention that.
True. And then you had the Mighty Mouse one, which was ridiculous. Like, really. If you've watched that fight back recently, it's like how you can score it for Cejudo is criminal in my mind. Anyway, long story short, he's here fighting Merab Dvalishvili to get another title shot. A man who spams takedowns and loads up every single shot by bucking at the waist and then springing forward. Very much could be telegraphed. Technically, I would say that Cejudo is a better fighter than Merab. Like, takedown-wise, he gets lovely inside trips. I mean, if he can get a body lock on Merab and then get an inside trip from there and take him down, that could be really interesting. I think at striking range, I think he's a better striker than Merab. It's just that the output is obviously a lot lower. Merab's whole thing, and I know you hate Merab, and I'm not a big fan either. It's the clinching you up against the cage, taking you down, letting you back up, taking you down, and it's getting that sort of washing machine sort of cycle. Is he going to be able to do that against Cejudo, Tom?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. Because Henry Cejudo is 37 years old, and it is too old. He's too old to be in there.
That is a huge red mark against him. Also, when we talk about the caliber athlete that Henry is, or was, or has fooled us into believing that he might be, that was in wrestling without a cage.
Yeah.
All right, and we saw this in the Sterling fight. When they were fighting in the open mat, like, Cejudo could handle it. The only thing that was kind of stopping them from truly taking advantage of his takedown defense, of his scrambles, was the fact he's not allowed to knee a downed opponent. He bested him in that arena. But when the bigger man, and let's be clear, Aljamain Sterling's a massive, massive bantamweight.
Yeah.
And Cejudo is significantly smaller than Merab here too. When it was against the cage, that's where you just saw this different animal take over, and that's not the wrestling pedigree. That's the size and the MMA wrestling which Merab possesses. So I would love Henry to win this fight. I really want that to happen. I need somebody to beat Merab. Anybody. We need like a concerted effort now. All nations should band together and stop this monstrosity from going any further forward. It's what he did to Petr Yan is just very sad, very upsetting for
and Jose Aldo.
But I thought, I'm ready to give Aldo the win in that fight.
Because he did so little.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, if you take a dominant position, obviously if you've got somebody's back, that's something different. But if you just hold them against the cage and get nothing off, and they're stomping on your feet and they're ripping the odd hook to your body, it's equal to me. You haven't neutralized them. You haven't taken them down. And Aldo did enough when it was open, when they were striking, for me. I need
to rewatch that fight. I need to rewatch it just to see.
Yes.
Yeah, that might be worth before we do the review of this one, just to see if we can actually fraud check Merab even further. Look, I need to. Yeah,
there is one fight I want to talk about with Merab. Cody Stamann.
Okay.
Cody Stamann. So we're going 4 fights back. Merab, fortunately at that time, despite being on a 5-fight tear, he was still confined to the nether regions of the cards, which was much better for everybody. But he fought Cody Stamann, who's not good. He's limited. Fighter. He's very limited, but he is juicy and willing. Yeah. And it wasn't straight. It wasn't all a bed of roses for Stamann. Somebody who could really engage with him, who could match him for power, scramble with him. It was a messy fight. Merab was able to get out on top, but it wasn't. He didn't steamroll him in the way that he did Petr Yan.
Fair enough. I'm picking Merab to win by decision.
I hate it, Joe. It's wrong, and I feel dirty, but I have to. I have to look at the facts here, and that is that Merab, he should be fighting for the title.
Cejudo's 37, man. It's too old at bantamweight. It's too old. It really is.
Would you have preferred him to hang it up after losing to Sterling there?
Yeah. I think so. I don't even know, by the way, if Merab wins this, if he's going to get a title shot still. Because, I don't know. If he has a boring win over Cejudo, Dana could still shit on him.
Well, there's no fun way he can win this fight, is there?
I don't know. Can he finish him? I don't think so.
Right.
I don't know.
Joe, in his entire career in the UFC, he has one finish. And that was against a man who gets finished by a strong breeze. Marlon Moraes.
A fight where Merab was almost finished as well, so yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Fair enough. So hold on, who did you pick? You picked Merab by decision?
Yes.
Fair enough.
It's the default choice. I hate it, but I've gone with it.
Now, listeners, you are going to hear something amazing here. Tom is about to pop massively. Roman Kopylov, Tom's boy, is back, and he's fighting Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Tom, why do you like Roman Kopylov, and is it for the same reason as me, which is he lost his first few fights, and then he sort of like figured his way out into the UFC, and then proceeded to absolutely murk fools?
Yeah, love that.
I love it as well.
Funky striker.
Yeah.
unorthodox, although he is, he's a southpaw, so by definition he is unorthodox.
Yeah.
But no, seriously, interesting striking, interesting kicking game, spinning back fists. It's all there. And
brutal
all
body
fun.
work.
Yeah, really, really rips. He can hurt people very badly. If you get one-dimensional fighters like Punahele Soriano, who will just, he's got a big overhand and he walks forward.
Yeah.
That is just that is a tapestry for a man like Kopylov to paint their masterpiece. And he certainly did that. So yeah, love him. We're not the only ones. He has been honoured by Jack Slack with a Filthy Casuals guide. Have you seen that, Joe?
I have indeed seen it, yes. Very good.
Yeah, something that Jack highlights in that, or we know it's a pseudonym, but we'll go with that. Jack Slack, he highlights the way he throws his kicks. So he does them from the inside. He has the big left kick, as a southpaw. Normally you're trying to step outside, have a huge wind up, big open, like Crow Cop, Yeah. But he'll actually put his foot inside, so he's not trying to get his foot outside the opponent, but inside, right? And then take it straight up the middle. Very, very small wind up, and it can go to the head, it can go to the body, and that is quite interesting to see. It's quite a potent weapon, and he does some big damage with that.
I think
calf kicking with his lead leg, which is
yes, very odd. Very odd, yes. No, he's a very funky striker. My issue, though, is if he's throwing kicks to the body, that could open up for takedowns for Hernandez, who, by the way, his takedowns average per minute is 6.79 per 15 minutes.
Wow.
Right? Just for a bit of context, Merab's is 6.55 per 15 minutes, and he's doing this at middleweight. Now, I will say, though, is that with Hernandez, he's fought guys who gas. He's fought guys who gas, and they gas quite hard. I'm looking at you, Edmund Shabazian. I'm looking at you,
Notorious.
Marc-Andre Barrio. I'm looking at you, Rodolfo Vieira. These guys gas hard. And I don't think Kopilov's going to do that because he doesn't overcommit to his strikes either. So this could be an interesting one for Hernandez. Sorry. That could be an interesting one for him. It's just that when Kopylov has been taken down, it was by Albert Duraev, and he kind of rode him quite badly, and it was quite an easy win for him in that sense. Like, when he got down, he couldn't really do much, and then he was punching from his back, and it was like, oh no, Roman, this does not look good for you. So I'm worried for him in that regard, and that is kind of my main reason for not picking Kopylov to win this fight. As much as I like him, I have had to go for Anthony Hernandez to win this. I do think he can take Kopylov down quite easily, and I think he can ride him out. I'm expecting Kopylov to make it difficult, though, particularly in that first round. I'm going to go with a Hernandez decision win. If Kopylov can win that first round, though, could be on for a tasty one.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up perfectly, Joe. My thoughts are the same logic. I don't have any contrary points. I've also picked Fluffy Hernandez to win this by decision. That first round will be a big test. He's going to hurt him, probably, coming in.
First 3-4 minutes are going to be brutal, I think, for Hernandez.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's going to be tough for him. That's going to be tough. But Kopylov, man, if he's worked on his takedown defense, that could be a rough one for Hernandez. That could be a really, really rough one. Right, should we go through our picks again?
Yeah, let's do that.
Cool. Starting from the bottom this time, we've both picked Anthony Hernandez to win by decision over Roman Kopylov. We've both picked Merab Dvalishvili by decision over Henry Cejudo. We've both picked Ian Machado Garry. I've picked by knockout and you've picked by decision. We've both picked Robert Whittaker to beat Paulo Costa. Did you pick decision for that?
I did.
And so did I. And for the main event, we are split. Alexander Volkanovski, I've chosen him to beat Ilia Topuria and retain his featherweight title by decision. Tom has picked Ilia Topuria to become the new featherweight champion by knockout. Oh my days. Are you regretting that pick now?
I feel sad saying it. I don't want to see that.
Well, you do, because you picked it.
I mean, when you are the current champ, this is also another problem that Volkanovski have. Me and Volkanovski were kind of the same in our position in our respective sports. When you're the champ, you get tired, Joe. You get complacent, and sometimes you lose sight of the things that matter. And perhaps that's where
What
I'm
on
at.
earth are you talking about? What on earth are you talking about? Right, listeners, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back next week to review this card. You can contact us at holdonbrother69@gmail.com. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, spread the word. If you could rate and review as well on Spotify or iTunes if you wish, that'd be greatly appreciated. And we'll be back next week. Tom, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, and God bless.
And listeners, thank you so much for joining us. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.